fancy.
So fancy. So.
A little fade in and a little fade out.
Yeah.
Really professional.
Yeah, I didn't have that last season. So I'm interested in seeing what that's about.
Yeah, this is going to be great. No, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm looking forward to who's going to join. I love, Carly, that you're in the UK because we're just reaching so many different time zones right now as well, in so many different areas, which is always fun for us to see who comes on and who joins.
Yeah. How many people are you expecting?
Was there
no.
100
190 that kind of said yes to the invite. We'll see how people to show. I think the beauty of doing things this way is that it stays on LinkedIn. So if people can't make it to the call, you're able to just watch whenever is convenient for you. So
when I do the changing face of my name, the shows will start. Yeah, see Emily Gillespie. Hello, Emily. So we might get a few, like say 50-ish today, but my bigger episodes have been up to like 2,500 over the course of the whole lifetime. So, yeah, it really depends. Like it depends on the guest. Like if you push it out again, if we do. We'll strip it into a couple of little clips and how those clips do. And,
yeah. It's great. Yeah. We're like 2 minutes out. So people no doubt are getting their notifications saying that we've gone live. We're now hitting the tops of their feeds.
Yeah.
And we'll start seeing people come on.
Yeah.
So.
What's it like over in the UK right now, Carly?
Well, yeah, we're heading into fall now. Winter, I fear, is just around the corner. It's starting to get cold.
Oh my gosh. I said to my husband yesterday, all the leaves have been like so vibrant and beautiful the last week in our town. And they're all like starting to fall off. Like the wind, like the slightest breeze, and they all are falling off right now. And I said to my husband yesterday, I was like, I feel like I'm going through a grieving process where like I'm trying to like just enjoy the colors as much as possible. But like winter is right there and I know it. And I have a hard time with winter. I don't love it. And I feel like I'm going through this, like trying so desperately to hold on to the sunshine and the last bit of warmth while knowing I know winter has to come as well. I know that it's a good season to go into and to try and be comfortable with, but it's hard. It's hard. Just kept like trying to hold on to the fall.
I remember we had a really strange summer too. It was really just cold and wet here the whole time. So it feels like we've been in fall for months now.
Yeah. It's been funny, because you went through a couple of really, really warm summers and now you're not.
It caught us all by surprise, I think.
All right, I'm going to go hide away now and leave you two.
Perfect. We're top of the hour. Yeah. We are at 1:00. Thanks, Peggy. Welcome, everyone. If you've been joining on or you're just coming on now, welcome to the Femina Collective Q3 call. I am Beth Barodi. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Femina Collective, and I always love being able to host these calls on a quarterly basis. And I'm so excited that today we have Carly from The Intelligent Miner who is joining us. And we will jump into what Carly is all about in just a few minutes. I do want to take a moment and just say that I am calling in from Kitchener, Ontario, which is on the traditional territory of the Neutral, the Anishinaabeg, and the Haudenosaunee people. And I am always appreciative and thankful for the care of the land that they have done over thousands and thousands of years, and that I get to live in this beautiful city and on these beautiful lands. Here at Femina Collective, we are all about changing the experience of women in the mining industry. We are women who love being in this industry, who love doing hard things, who love being able to jump into challenging and complex problems. And some of that is about being able to build community around each other and making sure that we are all really supportive and really feeling like our best selves. So we are a membership-based organization with members around the globe. we continue to grow, and we continue to really nurture that collective mindset of doing things better and doing things more responsibly and collectively. So today we have Carly Leonida, who is the founder of The Intelligent Miner, who is joining us. As we get started, please make sure that as the conversation is flowing, that you put your comments and questions in the chat box. We have Peggy Bell, who is our Chief Growth Officer for the Femina Collective. She is behind the scenes right now, moderating all of that for us, and you will see her in a little bit. We always like these conversations to be conversational. We believe that that's where the best information comes from, and how we are able to answer questions that you may have and just open that dialogue with our guest speakers. So Carly is UK based. She is a freelance technical writer and editor. She spent 15 years covering the global mining sector and has written for and managed some of the industry's leading publications. She is passionate about creating more sustainable future and society through mining. And in 2019, she established an online publication, The Intelligent Miner, to help bridge the communication gap between audiences inside and outside of the mining industry. Carly is also the current European editor of Mining Media International. She holds a first-class degree in geography and geology from Brighton University and was named one of the most influential women in mining by Clear Creek Media in 2016. I'm so glad that you said yes to joining us today, Carly. I'm so glad and so appreciative of the conversations we've been able to have over the last few months. I have been an enormous fan of The Intelligent Miner for years and years. I think one of the things that I really appreciate about it is the different voices that you constantly kind of curate and bring to the table for us. Coming from the mining industry, but not coming from a technical background, I've often found publications really hard to digest. I find things that are being said about the mining industry tend to skew towards either a financial or a technical side. And it hasn't always been the easiest medium for me to be able to learn from. And so when The Intelligent Miner hit the scene, I signed up for that newsletter as fast as I possibly could so that I could have it landing in my inbox. And I have found it so helpful in my own learning. So welcome to the Q3 call. Welcome to Femina Collective. And I'm going to hand it over to you for you to just kick us off. Tell us a bit about your background and really what inspired the finding and development of The Intelligent Miner.
Oh, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've worked with so many brilliant Femina members over the last few months, and it's so lovely to be here speaking with you all today, and to actually have the tables turned on me and be on the opposite side of the interviewing process. Yeah. It feels strange, but yeah, it's really good to be here chatting to you all. As you said, so I'm a freelance technical writer and editor, but I don't have any formal training as a writer. Everything that I've learned on the job. So I studied geology and geography at university, and I really love that. And I have full intentions of coming out and going into like environmental geology or something exciting like that. But I graduated literally just before the global financial crisis, which was both a blessing and a curse because nobody was hiring geologists. And I had to get a little bit creative with my skill sets and think about career paths that I wouldn't have considered otherwise. And so I think it was 2008, actually, I saw a job opening for the assistant editor at Mining Magazine. And I thought, why not? I can do that. You know, I love writing. I'm interested in the mining industry. Applied for it, got the job. And I guess the rest is history in that sense. So since then, I've been really fortunate. I've worked on lots of really cool publications. So the stalwarts of the industry, you know, Mining Journal, Australia's Mining Monthly, Geodrilling International. I went back to Mining Magazine, I think it was like 2011 maybe. I was 24 when they offered me the editor's position, and I stayed there for probably about 10 years. That was a great job. I worked with the most amazing team. We had actually an all-female editorial team by the end. They were just brilliant to work with. I'm still in touch with so many of them now. And so, yeah, I'm now the European editor at Mining Media International. So I write for Engineering and Mining Journal. I produce about 50% of their features every month. And then I occasionally have those articles translated into Spanish. They go into Equipo Minero and occasionally into Coal Age as well. And I've got lots of different hats that I wear. So I also ghostwrite for brands in the sector who need reports, articles, white papers, things like that, writing for them, basically connecting the brilliant subject matter experts that they've got with the marketing department and helping them put their story into words, helping them to make it readable. So in that sense, chances are you've probably read stuff by me without realizing that it was written by me as well. And then I also run the Intelligent Miner. So lots going on, but it's really interesting, keeps me out of trouble. I very much enjoy it.
I love that. I think it's very common, or more common now, to see women holding multiple hats. And I was having a conversation just yesterday with a woman where we actually asked the question of, like, is the mining industry ready for people to hold multiple hats or multiple roles or things like that? And so hearing all of the different publications that you are either responsible for, contributing to, or managing is really inspiring to see, because I think that it really lends to the fact that we as people, and we as women in particular, are very multifaceted. We have multiple interests, we have multiple capabilities and talents, and it doesn't always suit us to be, you know, streamlined into one way of doing things or one area. I see that for myself. I have Femina Collective and I work with the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, two very different things, both very fulfilling, and both being able to give me kind of something from both sides of the coin type thing. And I feel like that is a lot of what you're doing right now as well, by being able to touch so many different avenues of the industry and then pulling it all into writing. And I think it's super cool that you actually don't have a background in journalism or, you know, formal training in journalism, but you just said, yeah, that looks like a great opportunity and I'm going to do that. And it's led you to where you are now. Could you dive in for the audience a bit more on what the gaps are that you saw with before forming Intelligent Miner, and how you see it playing in the industry and in these publications right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I established the Intelligent Miner. There was a couple of reasons or inspirations behind that, shall we say. First of all, I mean, I think communication, and everybody's heard me say this 1,000 times, I'm sure, but I think communication is a really valuable and underrated part of the sustainability discussion in mining. You know, how are we going to get people interested in working in this industry? How are we going to get them interested in collaborating with companies or, you know, permitting new mines if they don't know anything about it and there's no way that they can go to find out more and to ask questions? And there are loads of brilliant publications in the mining space, but they are written by miners for miners. I mean, I remember when I had my interview, I think it was at Mining Magazine, and on the way home they gave me a copy of Mining Journal, which has, you know, been a cornerstone of the industry since like the early 1800s. And I sat on the train on the way home and I was flicking through it and I thought, wow, I don't understand a word of this. I mean, I can tell it's all good stuff, it's all written well, but I just don't understand this. I'm going to have to find a way to learn and to get interested if I'm going to write these articles. And then I think on the flip side, you know, the general media, whenever we hear about mining, it tends to be in a bit of a negative light. It's always in association with like a tailings dam collapse or strikes that, you know, are causing issues for whatever reason. And so there's, yeah, as I said, there's very few places where people can go to learn about mining in a way that's engaging and unbiased and that sort of, you know, invites them to ask questions and to learn more and to get excited. And yeah, I wanted to create a place where people could do that. And then as well, sorry, go ahead.
It's almost like demystifying the industry to some degree and actually putting like a human lens on it and humanizing what we do day in and day out. Because I think you're completely right. There is a perception of mining that has been there and continues to be there because the loudest stories are when disaster happens. And those are important to cover. Those are important to see. It's important to shed light on those pieces. And we also have a lot of opportunity in mining and a lot of great things that come from mining as well, or that can come from mining. And so demystifying this kind of intimidating industry that kind of seems to just live in stock markets and live at this level that seems unattainable to people, I think is so important. And I think that you've done that so very well.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, as well, there was, when I was thinking about it, there are so many topics that I wanted to read about, and that I'm sure other people want to read about too, that just aren't getting airtime in the traditional publications for whatever reason. Maybe they don't fit with the publication's editorial calendar. Maybe the writers don't have the sort of the contacts or the time to put together something on these topics that they don't necessarily know about. And so, yeah, I wanted to create a space where people could come and learn about mining and talk about it in a way that was really open and future fit, and didn't just talk about mining, but brought in adjacent industries, brought in regulators, brought in METS companies, everybody, bring them to the table so that we can, have conversations about what the future of mining could or should look like. And sometimes those conversations are going to be really difficult. But I always say to people, we don't just need to, it's not about offering solutions. Sometimes we won't be able to offer solutions, but I think these conversations are still valuable. We still need to be shedding light on them. So
I think that's so true. And as right before I ask this next question, I'll just put it to all of those who are watching us right now is put the question out to you is what type of topics do you want to see in mining publications? What type of topics do you think we should be covering from the mining industry? And then for you, Carly, my question is, how do you decide how to curate what information to bring into the Intelligent Miner? How do you find writers? How do you find people with voices in the industry? And what is it that gets you excited about seeing these pieces come together?
I think maybe I approach kind of the sort of the editorial development process a bit differently to other publications. So rather than being really prescriptive and saying, right, in January, I'm going to cover these 3 topics and that's that, I will theme each month. So we might have a month themed around mining and the workforce or mining and technology. And then under that, I'll have a little group of topics, that I might like to cover. And I try and keep it quite flexible, and I like to be able to just go out and have a chat with people in the industry and see what's coming up for them and what's interesting and what they're working on. And then I can kind of take the editorial in that direction and be really adaptable in that sense. So, I mean, I'm really fortunate I think I do maybe 20 interviews a month for different publications.
Wow.
So I get to chat
That's
to people at all levels. I get to talk to people in mining companies, academia, METS companies, like the full gamut, about what's important for them, what they're seeing going on in the industry right now. So I will use that to kind of guide the editorial calendar somewhat. And then I also ask the Intelligent Miner community once a year as well, normally around this time, like September, October, what they want to read next year. And I think in that sense, it's always been a really reader-led publication from the beginning. It's about what you want to read and what I want to write, and we find a middle ground for that. So it's always adding value in that sense.
Can you give us any tidbits about what you're hearing right now for some of those future trends or what kind of themes keep coming up? I mean, 20 interviews a month, that's good for you. That's a lot of talking and a lot of information gathering and synthesizing and all of that. So I would love
I have a running list that I keep throughout the year where I just make little notes. So, I mean, some of the stuff that I've got down, people want to hear more about mineral exploration, how that's evolving, innovation in that space, like electrification, dynamic charging versus static. We've got things like AR and VR technology, water accountability and opportunity. We've got waste valorization, how AI can be used for things like safety. I've got this massive list. I put everything into the bucket and then I sit down and sift through and think, what would be the most interesting? What would be the most valuable? And sometimes, I always say to people as well, don't be shy, come forward with topics. If you've seen me on LinkedIn and there's something that you want to see me writing about, drop me a message, drop me an email, put up your hand at the end of this call if there's anything that you would like to see covered, because I am writing the 2025 calendar at the moment. And, I've written, I would say probably about 20,000 words a month on mining every year for the last 15 years for different channels. So there's pretty much nothing I can't write. I can do all the usual stuff, but what I really want to do is sit down and have a chat about all the stuff we're not talking about in the media, all the really nitty gritty conversations. That is what interests me. And I think that's where we can add the most value.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I would say I'm gonna add on that call of action even more and be like, all the women on this call, touch base with Carly, because even having more female voices on some of these topics that we generally hear more from men helps with moving the industry forward. And I think some of the conversations that I've been having recently and really kind of speaking about from a female perspective is around that mineral exploration and the junior space and the exploration space. And I think one of the interesting things that came out this year when EY just released their top risk for 2025 for mining companies is access to capital has now outranked ESG, and the ESG risk side, I think, has been sitting on their top risk list for the last 3 years, 2 or 3 years consecutively. And I think all of that plays together. And when we look at access to capital, we look at the junior space and mineral exploration, we look at ESG risk, there are so many women's voices and women's expertise that are working in these areas right now. Yet I continue to see a lot of panels coming on board when it comes to capital markets, when it comes to these areas that are still all male panels. And we're missing that female voice. And there's so many women doing so many incredible things on this space that I would love to hear their voices being brought forward in publications like The Intelligent Miner and others, because we're here and we need to be able to be speaking about all areas, not just areas that are deemed more kind of female friendly, you know, your HR, your talent acquisition, things like that. Women are technical. I'm not, but women are in the industry, and they have so much to say in these areas. And so really elevating that, I think, is really crucial going into the future.
That's it. And I mean, put your hand up. Like, in addition, it's not just The Intelligent Miner. Every mining publication will set their editorial calendar a year in advance, and they all become available about now. So if there's a topic that you want to see covered, or a topic that you want to put your hand up to speak for, you know, just drop the editor an email, ask if you can get a copy of the editorial calendar, and then say, I would really like to be considered for this topic when you cover it. Because if you put your hand up now, chances are when they come around to writing those articles, you're going to be like front and center of mind for them. And I mean, from a journalist perspective, and I know we're all guilty of this, but when you're under like huge time pressure to get articles turned out, it's really easy just to go back to the same 10, 12, 20 people who, you know, probably are from the big companies and have amazing PR teams behind them who can be there prompting the journalists and saying, do you want to talk to so-and-so about this? But I think unless, you know, we put a bit of effort in and do some digging and find people and companies, you know, who are maybe a bit smaller or don't have the time to speak up, you know, then we're not going to bring different perspectives through. Nothing changes if nothing changes at the end of the day. So it's, you know, it's on the journalist to do that. But also, if there's something you want to see covered or you want to speak to, put your hand up. It's always welcome.
You are giving me an idea of being able to curate our voices even within Femina Collective. And you mentioned it right at the beginning. You've been able to work with some of our members and get some great content from them. And that's like putting in my head, and I know Peggy's going to be thinking about this as well, is like, how do we get our voices from the collective and all of our members and hear from them and kind of do some of that groundwork for you, where we're saying, hey, our members are saying this and here's who can talk about it. Because I think that's amazing. And I do want to say, anyone listening who wants to get in touch with you, I was blown away that you responded to my DM on LinkedIn as fast as you did. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to put this in her inbox. I'm kind of this like nobody over in Canada. She's probably has an inbox full of suggestions and people trying to get her attention. And I think it was less than a day. You responded and you were like, yeah, let's chat. Let's figure out what we can do. And so again, just reiterating that it can be intimidating. It can feel weird to just try and drop a note in someone's inbox. But again, exactly what you said, if we want different voices at the table and we want to be speaking about different things, then we absolutely need to be making those introductions and need to be putting ourselves forward on the topics that we want to be talking about.
And absolutely. I always say to people, like sometimes when we chat, if people are, you know, maybe entrepreneurs or they're from small companies, some people are like, well, you know, do I really deserve a seat at this table? And I always say, if you've got value to add, if you've got things to say and an interesting perspective, then your interview is just as important to me as somebody from a BHP or a Rio Tinto or a tier 1 miner. So don't be shy. Put yourselves out there a bit.
It's the age-old story. And I think this has come up in so many of our calls and conversations that we have. It comes down to that imposter syndrome. And it's, you know, is what I know good enough, or is it as valuable as what others have? And I think as women, we put that pressure on ourselves even more so, or we question that more about, is this new? Is this valuable for us? And I think, again, being able to hear stories like yours, you're a woman who has, again, been through all of these different areas on the publication side in the mining world. You've led mining publications, you're leading Intelligent Miner, you're touching all of these other points. It's like, just put that aside. Every time that thought comes in your head of what I have to offer is not valuable, is like, just throw it out like garbage, because it's not serving you and it's not serving us at large without having you at the table. And I would love to kind of flip that into a question for you about, when has that crept up for you? In all of this, you stepped into this brand new kind of unknown writing world. How was battling that imposter syndrome, or looking at those challenges for you? How did you overcome that, or how do you still work to overcome that through everything that you've now led and managed?
You know what? When I sat down and was reading my notes before this call, and I read that line, I'd written down and made a note about the fact that I am not a writer, and the imposter syndrome totally came up then. So I get it all the time. I still, I think, what have I got to add to the conversation? But for me, is that it's really cliche, but feeling the fear and do it anyway. Like when I took on the editor's position at Mining Magazine, I was only 24 years old. So I think I was the youngest editor in their 103-year history. And you, as the editor, you have to write the editor's comment every month. It goes right at the front with your photo, and it is an opinion-based piece. And kind of finding my voice for that was so hard. It was so hard knowing that 40,000 people were going to read that every month. And it was like, what have I got to bring to them? But actually, by the end of my tenure, that became like that was what I enjoyed doing the most every month. I loved the fact that I could share my thoughts in my own words, and that people would then write in afterwards and say, oh, I really resonated with that. I thought the same thing. So yeah, for me, it's about feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I actually had a really nice invite from somebody a couple of days ago. They said, oh, we're putting together a conference in 2025. Would you maybe deliver the plenary? And at first I was like, oh, I can't do that. And then I thought, no, just have the call, just find out more. There's a reason that they've come to you, and let's just have a talk about it. So maybe it will happen, maybe it won't. But we don't say yes to these opportunities if we don't put our hand up every now and again.
Totally.
More diverse voices.
This is what I love about these types of calls as well, because, hearing you say those things, I'm like, oh my gosh, if Carly feels that too, like, we're both just human here. We're both just kind of facing the same struggle, because you're someone that, like, I look to in the industry as, like, this expert, super intelligent, like, you've got it together, you're running this publication, you're connected, you're networked. And to hear, we struggle with the same things. We're all human. We bring these things to the table, and facing that fear is great. And that discomfort I always say, when you feel discomfort, it's not a bad thing. Sometimes that's like the most exciting thing you can feel, is that discomfort and pushing yourself to do something new and pushing yourself to get out there. When you are, you put these publications out, or when you put that opinion piece out, when you had to put your editor's piece out, no doubt you probably received comments that did not agree with either your opinion or didn't agree with the position that you were taking. How do you deal with that? How do you deal in this world of social media now, where everyone can put anything out because you can hide behind a keyboard? How do you deal with both the positive and the negative kind of scrutiny that comes along with having the Intelligent Miner out there?
You know what I find? This is generally from my sort of experience on all publications. People very rarely write in when you get things right, but they love to tell you when you get things wrong.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's more often negative comments or challenging you. But actually, I would really actively welcome being challenged. I don't always need to be right. My perspective is not always going to align with yours. Let's just have a chat about it. Let's find out where this goes. We can learn from each other on this. So
do you ever find new articles from the negative comments, like new people to write comment or articles?
Totally. Or you know what, maybe they want to write in. We've got a really great opinion piece on the Intelligent Miner. So once a month now, It's called Spotlight, and I know a few Femina members have been on and done this. But there's a place where you can come on and contribute an article written in your own words, in your own tone and style of voice, on a topic that you're passionate about. And I've had a few people, you know, where we've disagreed on something, and then they say, well, I think this and that. I'm like, great, write Spotlight for me. Let's put that out there, because that will spark some really interesting conversations for you. And that's probably one of the most read pieces that we've got on the site. So earlier this month, the Spotlight article was written by Dr. David Williams he specializes in like mine waste management. And he wrote a piece on tailings management, basically saying, you know, we're all doing great work, but there's still some things that are not working. That had 4,000 views in a day. That's massive, even for like a mainstream mining publication. So
I read his article, and I really enjoyed his article. I think that tailings and waste management conversation, I mean, it came up this morning. There was a post that Brooke Bibeau from Maker Resources just put up around abandoned tailing facilities and the impacts that has. But then I was reading The Intelligent Miner last week and was reading his article. And again, it goes back to that idea that we were talking about, is we've all heard about those tailing disasters that have happened in Brazil, around the world, South Africa, Canada. And that's when we hear about waste management, is when it has failed and when it has not worked. And hearing his voice and hearing that call to action of we need to do better, we need to do different. I think on those really hard things, sometimes it's hard to put that voice out there because it's such a risky thing to talk about. It's such a risky thing to kind of take on yourself and be the voice for. But there are also just brilliant, brilliant minds working on these things, because we know the industry needs to be better. We know we need better waste management practices. And so being able to have read those types of things in The Intelligent Miner just kind of sparks those conversations again and provides ability for people to be able to link with other people who are working on these issues and challenges at the same time. So I really appreciated that article when I read it and really liked it. I just want to notice, I just saw a comment, and I don't know who this is from. It's coming just up as a LinkedIn user, but it just said, being interviewed by The Intelligent Miner was the single best experience I've ever had in journalism, hands down. And so that obviously is a huge testament to you and how you approach these interviews. And again, being able to show up after 20 of them in a month, that's a lot. That's a lot to be able to then still show up authentically and show up with that curiosity to be able to make people feel seen and heard in these interviews. And how do you do it? How do you do it?
It's the best bit of my job. It doesn't matter how down or tired I am that day when I come to have these calls, you know, when I go into it, even if I'm feeling a bit like, this is going to be a lot, I always walk away from them feeling so energized. And quite often people, you know, come to me and they're really not sure about whether they want to do an interview or not, because maybe they've had a bad experience somewhere else. But I'm always so grateful that they're willing to trust me with their perspectives and their stories. And I know a lot of people kind of have challenged me on this, but I do like to send out article drafts before they're published, because I think if somebody is willing to put that time and effort in to talk to me and to share what can be quite vulnerable perspectives sometimes, then the least I can do is show them a copy of the article and make sure that they're happy with it and give them a chance to edit it. And I feel like that really builds trust. That, you know, is what gets people coming back and knowing that the Intelligent Miner is a safe space where we can come and have these conversations. It's so important that we have these spaces.
I love that, because I think I have shied away from publication sometimes because I worry about that. There's like this risk and kind of liability to, if my name's associated with this and I don't get to see the final product of what's going out, how do I know that it's being used appropriately? And you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, being able to do this puts people in a vulnerable position, especially depending on the topic that they're covering. And so that is really incredible that you allow them to see those drafts and that you actually have them input on that, because I think in this industry, that reputation, that making sure that you are not bringing on risk to your company, to your role, to whatever it may be, is so key. So that is like really, really great to hear. I do want to, Peggy, I know that you were backstage, but I want to call you up and call you into the conversation to help us. I have not really been looking at the chat so that I could focus on Carly, but have you come in and tell us what's been going on that side and any questions that you may have for Carly as well.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. And yeah, so that was Liz Lappin, who was.
Oh, Liz, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, she said a couple of things that I'm actually going to turn one of those into a question here in a second. I just want to say I'm super happy to have Carly on. Carly is one of my bosses, per se. I work with Carly at the Intelligent Miner, and I was always a big fan of what Carly was doing. And so to have an opportunity to contribute regularly to Carly, to the Intelligent Miner was like a dream come true. Like, I was so excited. And I think one of my questions is Carly and I have discussed in the past, when looking at articles that I want to write, is I sometimes ask her to put me in articles that I don't have any interest in at all, because it means that I'm going to learn something new. And that's the most recent article coming up. I was like, I have no interest in this subject, but I'm going to speak to some really interesting people about it. And how has that type of attitude, because I'm assuming that was also true for you, Carly, how did that help you to dig into more of what the mining sector means outside of your own particular interests, but give you an even deeper understanding of what the sector is?
Yeah, it's I do actively encourage people that I work with to get outside of their comfort zones with what they're writing, because I've done that myself. You know, there have been times when I've been assigned an article on a topic I know absolutely nothing about. It's not necessarily that I'm not interested in it. It's just that I don't know anything about paste backfill, or I don't know, tire recycling or something. But I treat those conversations as an opportunity to learn. And at the end of the day, that gives me a more holistic knowledge of the sector. And you know what, generally I find, because mining, like, people are the very best bit of the mining industry. And even if I don't know the subject, even if I don't have that in common with someone, you know, they're probably really passionate about making mining better in some way, whether that's through like optimization or sustainability or whatever. We can find a common ground. And yeah, we can learn and grow in that sense. And actually, I think sometimes, particularly for like the Intelligent Miner, I've noticed that having somebody who doesn't have a background or knowledge write that article, it means that you can explain, because you're starting from scratch sometimes with topics, you can explain that topic to the readers so much better than somebody who's got a huge technical knowledge and will be tempted to dive in with all the really like technical details and things. Sometimes you need that, like, more, you need to approach it from a different angle. And you wrote a really great piece for us, Peggy, the last one, which was on predictive maintenance. And I love the fact that you opened that by saying, this is not my area, but you know what? I've got interested in this, and this is how, because I'm interested in people. And I looked at the people aspects. Great. I found that so much more interesting than just a straight up piece on predictive maintenance.
Yeah, and it's coming that way too with this next one too. And I found it so. I had an amazing interview experience yesterday with one of the experts, and it's amazing when you ask them questions that is not even related to your sphere of influence, how much it comes into your sphere of influence just by everything really is connected and everything really does go together. We just need to ask the questions and learn from other people, and then the whole world kind of opens up. So
I also find that it's when you are talking with people, one of the ways that I've been able to dive into those areas that don't necessarily interest me off the bat is really seeing the light in people's eyes as they get really passionate about the thing that you may not be interested in, but you see the level of passion, dedication, and care that they have to this thing or this topic. And that, for me, I can really feed off of other people's excitement. So like, you could be talking about something that I have no clue about, but when I see you light up and I see you really start talking about it in a really caring and passionate way, I like jump on that bandwagon so fast. And I then want to learn about it. And then I want to be curious about it. And I want to understand, why is this getting you so excited? And how do I get on that same level as well? And just bringing that curiosity. And again, that people perspective forward, that we are all people first. We are all people with different skills, talents, all of those types of things. And then collectively, we can bring that to the table in really unique ways that serve for a larger audience.
Totally.
Yep,
Totally.
100%. So Liz' comment was that she would love to hear more about how folks think EU battery passport could drive ESG shifts in mining. So I'm not going to ask you that in particular, but what is the so like how does journalism drive a function of uncovering the knowledge around these really complicated topics? Like what can we do as people who write unlock some of that mystifying pieces of these happenings in the world?
I mean, it kind of goes back to what Beth was saying, but share your passion, share what interests you. That people are interested in people at the end of the day. We know that from social media, right? We all love looking in on other people's lives, other people's interests. I think it's an opportunity to, as you were saying, really humanize the mining industry. You know, it doesn't, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, but it doesn't matter how amazing a mining company is doing, you know, if they're performing to the very highest standards and applying like the very best social and environmental practices, if there is no place for people to go and learn about what they're doing and get interested and engage with it, and you know, if they can't see the people who are behind that, then sometimes it can still seem a bit opaque. Like the industry can still seem opaque, even if our supply chains aren't. And I think putting people front and center in storytelling, whether that is through writing articles, you know, in the first person rather than the third person. I do that all the time because it allows people to connect with me and what I'm interested in and my experiences. And I say the same again, if we have like contributed articles, you know, put yourself front and center in that story. That will find a way for people to get interested and for them to see a kind of chink of light or an avenue into the industry. And there's other stuff as well. Like, I think it would be great to have more leaders, like mining leaders, get active on social media and share their thoughts and stuff that they're really passionate about. Someone who was always really good at that was, I might have gone a bit off topic here, by the way, sorry, but it's something I really feel strongly about. Mark Kitafani, who was obviously CEO at Anglo American, he's now on the board at Vale. He was always really good at that. And when I started The Intelligent Miner, I kind of asked everyone like a bonus question at the end of their interview. And that was, who in the industry do you really look up to? And 9 times out of 10, they always said Mark. Always.
Have you ever asked Mark?
He wasn't afraid to share his thoughts and opinions. Yeah. And sometimes they were controversial. And he wasn't afraid to say, this topic matters to me. And this is what I think on it. And it would be great to see more of that. Someone else who's really good at that is Rohitesh Dwan from the ICMM. I love the fact that their newsletter every month comes from his email address and is written by him in the first person. That makes me feel so much more connected to that organization than it would, you know, otherwise if it were coming from like a generic address.
And I think that's the piece right there, is that it's really hard to connect with some of these other leaders because they're so polished, because there's such an approach that if we're going to be, I know social media has had, people think a whole bunch of different things about social media and being on social media, and is it a risk for companies or a liability? But it is the main communication tool right now. I mean, we have one of our members, Jess Scanlon, who is like a social media guru, and she can speak about this way better than I can. But using social media to improve your company's like presence and your leadership's presence in the world, I think is so key. But yet we see so many people overthink it to the extreme, and everything that comes out is so polished and has to be perfect and is this thing, and people see through that right away. It's not the stuff that people actually like, because people come to social media, I mean, you said it, to come and look in at other people's lives, and that truly is the reality of being able to see, what is this person thinking, how does this person act? If people meet me face to face, I want them to feel like I'm the same person that they see on LinkedIn, or when they see me sharing my opinions, that I'm that same person across the board. And so when you do have leaders that are able to step up and say, yeah, this is me and I'm going to take it, again, this comes from the same conversation I had with this woman yesterday, where she framed it so well, where she said, I'm so okay with being me right now because I'm okay and comfortable with the consequences that come from me being in the space that I own. And those consequences can be positive or negative. But I think when leaders are able to really hone that in and be able to share, it's what we're looking for. It's who we look up to in the industry. They're there for a reason, for the most part. And so how do we just encourage more of those voices to come to the table authentically, recognizing also, as you said, that typically the comments and the communication that you will receive back will be people who disagree with you and people that don't necessarily want to see your voice at the table as much. So how do we still encourage people to use their voice authentically, especially when they do have influence or leadership roles in companies, to be able to keep these conversations going and get to that nitty gritty? Like, we know your quarterly calls are coming. We know your earnings calls are going to be out there. We know your AGMs are all set up in a very specific way. But how do we get to the heart of what needs to be talked about in this industry, and remain authentic without crucifying people for having opinions?
That's it. Authenticity builds trust, and putting people in front of people face to face, whether that's through social media, whether it's through people going out, through leaders going out on site and meeting impacted communities, whether it's sitting down with investors, whatever, that builds trust. And without trust, we are not going to get a social license to operate. We're not going to get new mines built. It's so important. Mm-hmm. I think that's what the industry is really struggling with right now, but communication can play a huge part in that.
Yeah. I think that's funny, because a few months ago, I came to Beth and I said, all right, we're going to start Make Beth Famous. And it was really about putting Beth's ideas out into the ethers of mining. And I hope she saw the passion in that idea, and that's what turned the tide into Make Beth Famous, because I was so passionate about making her ideas were so fantastic. I was like, no, we need to get them out there. It
all comes down to what we were chatting about, Carly, I was sitting over the summer, I was sitting with Belinda Labatt from Lamico Metals and one of my really good girlfriends who is not in mining, but she's on the PR and comm side. And we were sitting and they challenged me because I don't know, I talk about so many random things at any given time. And they said, why aren't you putting these opinions out and like sharing them with people and actually having them live? And I said, because what would it matter? I am like not an expert. I kept saying, I'm not an expert in anything. I just like to know a lot about everything. And I said, so it wouldn't make any sense for me to share anything because no one's going to care and it's not going to matter. And they challenged me and they said, no, you should be just putting these out, write about what you're talking about, write about the conversations you're having. And if you see threads and themes coming up, and it is actually, so I now have challenged myself that every week of the year it was like, I think July is when that conversation happened through until December. Every week I'm putting out an article on LinkedIn, just for my own, like getting out of my comfort zone, getting out of my own imposter syndrome of what I have to say doesn't matter, and just putting it out into the world. And it has been so rewarding for myself. And it's been so fun to be able to recognize and understand how many conversations I've been having on so many different topics. And then just being able to put that out there and see what happens and see how that kind of spurs on. Because I think, again, it came down for me of that imposter syndrome of like, no one is going to be interested in anything that I have to say. It's just not going to happen. And then I realized I kind of shifted and I was like, it actually doesn't matter because it's important to me. And so I want to put it out and I'm going to put it out because it's important to me. And I think the more we can all do that and start kind of raising our hands saying, hey, I'm thinking about this, or hey, what about this? Or jumping off of a piece that comes out of a publication like Intelligent Miner and starting those conversations, I think we're just going to see more and more of those authentic conversations and voices start coming to the table.
I hope so. And you know what? That was one of the things I found hardest when I started the Intelligent Miner. Going from a publication where if I was going to put an opinion piece out there, I had a team, I was sitting with a team of like 10 or 12 other editors who I could send it to first and say, what do you think? Mm-hmm. To then go to being a sole trader by myself. And I had to kind of build that trust in myself, to read that article and think, yeah, this is good enough to put out. This opinion is valid. That was really hard. So even now I still like send things on to my husband. I'm like, I know you're not in mining, but would you mind reading this for me and just saying if it's a load of rubbish or if it's actually okay, if you think I should put it out there? He's like, okay, yeah, send it over. It's so important to have those cheerleaders, to have people, you know, friends, colleagues, people in the industry who can read your stuff and just give you feedback and say, do it anyway. It is good.
Have you ever been surprised by what articles have done really well versus what articles have not done well?
Yes, I'm trying to think of some examples. Sometimes stuff that I've written that is really in-depth and really well researched and has loads of links, loads of background reading, doesn't get as many hits as I would like. And I'm always a little bit disappointed when that's the case. But then something else, you know, maybe a short opinion piece that I've flung together in literally 30 minutes off the back of a conversation with someone gets 4,000 or 5,000 views. And I'm like, well, you know, how do I feel about that? I'm pleased that people are reading it, but also I didn't put as much effort into it as the other one. So
have you like tried to figure out why that's the case? Like maybe there's a piece of like overthinking versus just being spontaneous and being like, here it is, here's what I'm thinking, or
maybe. And again, I think perhaps it tends to be the pieces whereby I'm putting myself and my own thoughts out there on the line. That's what people like to read. That's what draws them in, and you know, that they can relate to the most, as opposed to a really technical piece, where I am not front and center of that. Maybe that's what it is.
I'm conscious that we have just a few minutes left here. And so I just want to give you, Carly, an opportunity to just kind of share any final thoughts or calls to action or comments or questions for anyone who's been listening.
There is one more question in the chat. Can I put that up? Is that okay? Or
sure, we will do one more question, and then Carly, feel free to then kind of wrap up before I just give some final thoughts on the call.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. From your own experience in having conversations with experts on different topics, how do you drive with a conversation for someone who's trying to find a different way to connect?
Oh, you know what? I think just reaching out to people and saying, I'm interested in this topic. You know, most people are really passionate about what they do and are more than happy to share their knowledge with you and what matters the most to them. So I think just being brave enough to go and speak to them, first of all. But then also I find, like, when I'm writing interview questions, sometimes I will say to people up front, I know nothing about this topic, and I'm going to start from the beginning, and I'm going to ask you all the stupid questions, and I hope that's okay. And they appreciate that honesty and transparency and are happy to work around that. Be brave enough to do that would be my advice.
There's also a piece that I've shared with a few people, is when you are finished with a meeting, finish with the question, who else should I be talking to? Is there someone else with this in this area that I should be chatting with? Because not only do people love talking about the areas that they're passionate about, people also love connecting you with other people who can also share. And it's amazing to watch people's networks just like explode from being able to bring in that one simple anchor of who else should I talk to?
And you know what? Anybody who follows me on LinkedIn will know that I do this. Quite often I go on and just say to my network, I've got a piece coming up on ESG or innovation or finance. Who's got interesting leads for me? Who's doing interesting work in this space? Who knows someone who I should be speaking to? And quite often their suggestions are so much better than mine. And we get much richer, more interesting conversations off the back of that. I'm so grateful for my amazing network who will come forward and send me 20, 30, 40 different suggestions.
I love that.
Because it takes me to places that I didn't know that conversation was going to go. And it's really interesting.
Amazing. So any final thoughts from you, Carly, or any final comments to leave with people watching?
I would say be brave. If you want to have your voice heard, if you want to put an opinion across, if you've got something to say that you are not seeing represented in the media, but you would like to see more of it, be brave, go forth, talk to the editors, put your hand up, publish it yourself, write an article and put it out on LinkedIn. There are so many channels now which, you know, don't require a publication. You can do it yourself. And if there is anything that you guys, or girls, I should say, would like to see covered in the Intelligent Miner next year, you know, put your hand up, speak to Beth, speak to Peggy, get my contact details, approach me on LinkedIn. I'm very open to collaborating and to hearing from you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is, again, what we are all about here at Femina Collective is really elevating women's voices, and especially women doing just incredible things, which, Carly, you are 100% one of those women with the Intelligent Miner and all of the work that you have done on the mining publication side. So thank you so much for joining us today. I know that the audience, no doubt, enjoyed this conversation. And as we wrap up, I do just want to say from the Femina Collective perspective, we are jumping into our fall dinner series right now. So Peggy and I are heading out to Vancouver next week for our sold out dinner with women across the industry in partnership with Women Get On Board for our Vancouver dinner. We're coming back to Toronto, which I believe as of the start of this call, there was one ticket left for our Toronto dinner before it sells out as well, for women to come together and just share an evening together. And then in December, we'll be heading to Denver for our first time in Denver for our Denver dinner and pulling together women in Denver. And those tickets will be going on sale next week. And then just as we leave, I just wanted to give a shout out. We love to be able to celebrate our members and successes that our members are doing. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Janelle Dixon, who is one of our members and is a tax partner at KPMG, working on the mining side, is pulling together or has pulled together a full female panel for PDAC in 2025 on the capital market side, which is super unusual and super rare to see. And I just want to give a shout out to her for leading that charge and really being intentional about ensuring that the topic was being covered by female voices. And so more to come on that, but just congratulations to Janelle on being able to do that. So once again, Carly, thank you so much for joining us, and for everyone who has watched and participated in the comments. We greatly appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you all back at our year-end call in December. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.